Hey everybody, this is your friend Paul Wilbur. I'm jumping on really quickly to ask the question, is Jerusalem really the capital of Israel? Is Jerusalem the capital of Israel? We're getting ready to celebrate Shabbat here in just a few hours. For some of you, it's a few hours more. For you, some of you, it's a few hours less. But I'm jumping on just to ask the question, not to be political, but we get asked so often, and I have an ulterior motive, really, in asking this question. Is Jerusalem really the capital of Israel? Has it always been the capital? Who has the right to declare a capital? Well, let's talk a bit, just for a few moments, about the United States of America. We have to go way back to 1770, even before 1776 and 1780 and 1812 and the different wars over this great land. Did you know that the first seat of government in the United States was not Washington, D.C., it was York, Pennsylvania? And then because of this is where the Confederate Papers were established, the Constitution, and then because of advancing warfare, moved over to Philadelphia. From Philadelphia, eventually, it was moved to Washington, D.C. as the place of government for this nation. It was not always Washington, D.C. So what about Israel, that little piece of land with that even smaller piece right in the middle called Yerushalayim? So we have to go back to the time of kings, right, in Israel in order to have a capital city. So King Saul was the first king anointed by Samuel the prophet, directed by God. But he didn't rule from Jerusalem. He ruled from a city called Gibeah. Well, and then years are going by, and it's obvious that David of the house of Jesse is going to be the next king. He's a warring kind of king, right? They sang songs about Saul. Saul has killed his thousands, David his tens of thousands. And David had his eye on a different piece of land. It was under David, King David of Bethlehem, where another king was born, but also chose Jerusalem as his city from which he would rule. But David was a warring king, and he began to unite the tribes underneath his warfare. He had his eye on a hill called Zion. This was a mountain fortress that, from at least my studies, had never been conquered. It was inhabited by a warring people, and those walls had never been breached until David comes and conquers the city. He establishes it as his city where he will reign and rule from. It's a high place. It's surrounded by mountains. It makes good sense that this would be a good place to rule a nation from, a high place with water and easily fortified and easily protected. So David sets up his throne there. He builds himself a palace with the help of some of his friends. Hiram from neighboring country sends him cedars from Lebanon and artisans, and he builds a nice house. But he wanted to build a center of the worship of this great nation, because everybody knows that the center of government has to be solidified by the God of heaven and earth. And he wants to build a temple, a house of worship for the God that he loved and served. But because you know the story, his hands are covered with blood. That's given to his son Solomon, who he continues to establish Jerusalem as the center, as the capital, the place of worship, the place of government in this relatively new nation called Israel. And so generations go by, and Jerusalem is taken over, trampled down. There's the great dispersion and captivity of the Babylonians. And then Israel comes back with Nehemiah and becomes the capital again. And then there's the Greeks, and then the Romans. And Jerusalem is finally taken down for what seems to be a final time in 70 AD, as the Romans again destroy the temple for the second time, but this time taking down every stone. Why every stone? Because the mortar was pure gold. That was their motivation. Anyway, and so for thousands of years, Jerusalem lays in ruins, and it's not the capital of anything. It's just a land that is ruled by lots of different people. And then lo and behold, 1948, and Israel is given to the Jewish people as a homeland forever, partially in repentance for the Holocaust, and by a very slim margin. Israel is given back to the survivors, the Jewish survivors of the Holocaust, by the UN, and Jews then begin to gather there from all the nations, including Africa and Asia, from every nation, from the four corners of the earth. Well, was Jerusalem then immediately reestablished as the capital? Interesting, but for the first little while, the center of government, at least where decisions were being made, was not Jerusalem, but it was Tel Aviv. Then in 1950, it was decided that the capital city has to be Jerusalem. Why? Because historically, this has been the capital of the nation. And so then there was all kinds of disputes and struggles. And a good part of Jerusalem was still controlled up until 1967. The eastern part of Jerusalem was controlled by the Hashemites. And during the 67 Six-Day War, there was a reunification of the city of Jerusalem, the Western Wall, and all the territory was included in that city of God. So I want to invite you. I am leading a tour again this year. I want to say, come and see for yourself. May 6th through the 15th, you can come and join me. We've got a link right here in the description. And if you click on that link, join me for a worshiping tour. And I'm titling this tour In the Footsteps of King David. We're going to trace these footsteps of King David, even seeing Hebron, where David began to have reign and rule, the very famous city there in Israel, which parallels, of course, the life and times of Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah. We will worship our way through the land. We'll pray our way through the land. will see and taste and touch and feel and smell. And you'll see for yourself. Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the great King. And it's been called this for thousands and thousands of years. But I would submit to you, who's the great king? Is it King David, the one who initially established Zion as his capital city? Or is there a greater king than David? Obviously, the answer is yes. King Yeshua. And he is returning to that city. You remember in Acts chapter 1, he stood there, Yeshua, not David, stood on the top of the Mount of Olives, where we will stand as well, spoke to his disciples and said, now that you've seen and heard, here I am, raised from the dead. Now be my witnesses. That's be faithful. A witness is someone who's faithful to witness to what they have seen and heard. And so he said, be my witnesses here in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the world. I want to invite you to join me on an incredible time to tour, to worship, to pray, to dance, to taste and feel and smell and experience the King and his capital, Jerusalem. May 6th through the 15th, join me and a host of others as we experience Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the nation Israel and the eternal capital of the great King. I hope you'll join me. It's going to be a remarkable time. If you've never been, it is life-changing. If you've been before, this is just another piece of an extraordinary experience of your life, a place where you can experience the King, not just hear about him. Remember, it's a local call from Jerusalem to the throne of heaven. God bless you. Thanks for joining me today. Is Jerusalem the capital of Israel? We will show you historically, thousands of years, the answer to that question. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you again soon. God bless you.